Okay. I'm going to read to you the allegations against you. I'm going to ask you then to tell me what your plea is going to be. Number 2, you failed to report to an officer from November of 2019 until your arrest on July 1st of 2021. How do you plead to that, sir?
Not guilty with a statement, sir.
All right. And number 3, you did not provide a valid address where you were residing. You left Louisiana and fled to Texas without permission. How do you plead to that charge?
Guilty with a statement, sir.
All right. Mr. Rousell, your case has been assigned to me. Since you have pled that you want to make a statement on these charges, why don't you go ahead and tell me your statement about failing to report to an officer from November of 2019 until your arrest in July 1st of 2021.
Okay, well, my officer that I had at the time when I was in parole in Atlanta, Georgia, we had differences on several occasions. The differences was she was trying to send me back to Louisiana without a violation and told me that she was going to get me back to Louisiana by any means necessary. I got caught with a marijuana cigarette. That officer tried to upgrade that charge from a misdemeanor to a felony. And it was proven fact in court that I went to court and got proved to be a misdemeanor on a charge before a judge and the officer that she had arrested me. And I wrote to the board on her and told the board that she's trying to upgrade a misdemeanor to a felony, and we having differences. A judge that sentenced me and an officer of the law that she had to arrested me for a misdemeanor. She trying to upgrade my charges to send me back before the board on a misdemeanor charge, my first time misdemeanor. And so we had differences. He told her to reinstate me back on parole. They let me out of jail in Atlanta, and I went back to the office to report to her. She had papers before me and tell me, I'm going to send you back to New Orleans by any means necessary. You from New Orleans and we from Atlanta, we don't want you up here anyway. So me and her had differences, so we didn't see eye to eye. She didn't contact me, I didn't contact her.
All right, well, let's slow down just a second. You were placed on parole out of New Orleans, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you had a compact to transfer your parole to Georgia.
Yes, sir.
You had issues with the parole officer in Georgia.
Yes, sir. One of them I had three.
Well, let me finish.
Okay.
There were some issues, you didn't particularly like them. You had problems with her, and she said, you got to go back to Louisiana in answer to your parole judge. I mean, to the parole board. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You chose not to go to Louisiana. Instead, you went to Texas. Why?
Yes, sir. I didn't choose to go back to Louisiana, from Atlanta to Texas. At first, she brought me before a board in Atlanta. I went before the board in Atlanta, and the board told her it's a written statement that to reinstate me back in Atlanta. She took it up on her own to send me back to Louisiana.
Well, my question is, why is it you went to Texas?
Because I had a daughter that was in the military that was in her mother's stomach when I first started doing this time 36 years ago. I never met her, never been with her. She's been serving her country.
Why didn't you go back to Louisiana and explain all of this to the parole board?
Because I had nowhere to stay in Louisiana. I had no family, no nothing in Louisiana other than an aunt that was on dialysis. I had nowhere to go in Louisiana.
When did you go to Texas?
I went to Texas about three months prior to I got arrested.
You never contacted the parole board in Louisiana?
I called the board on Poland Avenue and asked them, did they expected me to be back in Louisiana? I got no answer back. I must have left my name and number.
Mr. Rousell, you are a sex offender.
Yes, sir, that's what they say.
You are required to register and make notification.
Yes, sir, and I registered every year.
And from 2019 until you were arrested on July 1st of 2021, you never did that, did you?
Yes, sir, I registered at Fulton County Sheriff's Office in 2020.
In
Yes,
Georgia?
Huh?
Where?
Yes, I did.
In Georgia?
In Georgia, Fulton County.
But you were in
Sheriff's
Texas.
Office. No, not in 2020, I wasn't in Texas. 2021, I was in Texas.
Well, that's what I understand. You moved from where you registered without notifying anybody where you were.
I notified Fulton County Sheriff's Department. I wasn't moved yet. I just been in Texas.
I hear you. You
Right.
went to Texas. Your responsibility is to register as a sex offender wherever you are. You left Georgia, went to Texas, never notified the people in Louisiana where you were, never made any notification in Texas that you were a sex offender, right?
Right.
And you knew you were supposed to do that. That was a serious part of your parole.
Yes, sir, and I agree with you.
And by not letting anyone know where you were violating your parole. Do you understand the significance of that?
Yes, sir, I do. I understand the significance of it so well. That's why I was getting Social Security in Texas and disability in Texas. They had my daughter's address and everything, but no, I did not notify them that I was a sex offender because I was planning on coming back to Georgia.
But you didn't. You got arrested.
Yes, sir. That's
How
why
did you get arrested? How did you get arrested?
Going on a military base where my daughter works at, and the MPs arrested me on a military base. I wasn't trying to hide.
Because there were warrants for your arrest because you had absconded.
Yes, sir. I agree with you.
Tell me a little bit about your mental health history. What kind of medication do you take?
I'm on Rimrods, Zoloft, Zyprexins.
And what is that medication for?
Post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, anxiety, depression.
And how long have you been diagnosed with that?
About 5 years.
And do you know what the basis or what the reason for the post-traumatic stress disorder is?
Yes, sir. It's from me being incarcerated since I was 24 years old to 63 years old, in which I am now.
Were you on your medication while you absconded from Georgia?
No, I wasn't, sir.
Why not?
Because I didn't have any.
Were you going to a doctor? Were you getting regular treatment?
Yeah, I was going to Miss Debbie Stevens, a psychiatrist at Mercy Care in Atlanta, Georgia.
But when you went to Texas, were you getting any medication? Were you getting any treatment?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because I just had started getting Social Security in Texas, and I just started going to the doctors. I hadn't picked a provider as of yet.
All right. I think we have, does any of the panel have any questions? I don't see any.
Well, I'm sorry, I have one question. So, sir, how long had your application with the Social Security been pending?
It's been approved. I was awarded by a judge total disability.
I asked you, how long had that application been pending?
About a year, I think. About a year.
Okay, so you just started seeking out disability about a year ago.
Now, I've been seeking it out, but I was denied once. I was denied once disability, and I had to get a lawyer to get it.
Okay, and then you got cut off,
Yes.
and then you reapplied about a year ago. You started applying
Yes.
again about a year
Yes.
ago.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And prior to that, how were you living in Georgia?
I was homeless. Honestly, I was sleeping homeless on the ground for about a year in Georgia, across from the courthouse, across from the sheriff
Okay.
department by church. I was homeless.
Okay. If somebody asks you where's your home, what would you say is your home? Where's your home?
I would say El Paso, Texas, with my daughter.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that went well, huh? Your time with your daughter went well?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I had 3 months of the best time of my life. That was my first time ever being with my daughter. She was in her mother's stomach. She'd been in the military.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard that. I'm just glad. I'm glad.
Yeah, them 3 months was the best time of my life.
Good.
My grandchildren.
Okay, good. All right, that's all I had. Thank you for answering my questions. That's all I had, Chair.
We have a few speakers, I think, Teresa.
Yes, sir. We have one who is speaking, Miss Mary Harrison.
Ms. Harrison, if you'll unmute your microphone and let us know what you'd like to say.
Good morning. I'm speaking on behalf of my cousin Joseph Rousell. And the reason why he went by his daughter, he had no support in Georgia. He was living from pillar to pole. All the family members up there, which is my mother's oldest sister, which is his mother, they turned their back on him. And that was his reason for going by his daughter.
Thank you,
He was
ma'am.
running for his life.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
No, sir.
Mr.
Your Honor, can I say? Your
I'm
Honor,
sorry?
can I say something else?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. He also was encountered by people jumping on him. He used to call my mother, which is my mother, who is his mother's sister. And the only support he had was the people here in New Orleans. But my mother's on dialysis. She have a lot of health issues. But he called us every day. He was going from pillar to pole. They turned it back on. They was doing him all kind of things. He would all call us on the phone when he was running for his life. He had no other choice.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Mr. Roussel, is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I just want to apologize to the board, from absconding. I know I did, and I know I did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was in a serious situation in Atlanta, and I really was running for my life, and the only person I knew that loved me was my daughter. That's why I went by her. Yeah, I did it, be knowing that I shouldn't have done it. I should have registered. But at the time, I was in some serious danger in Atlanta. I was living at one time with a brother that was a drug addict, and he had people coming in and out of his house with drugs that I didn't want to be a part of, and I had fights with them, and they shot at me and a few other things. When I left Atlanta, I really had to leave.
Mr. Roussel, is your daughter willing, would you be living with your daughter if you were released?
Yes, sir.
And who all lives with your daughter?
My daughter, her fiance, Gad, and my 2 granddaughters.
Now, did I understand that your daughter is in the military?
Yes, for 19 years, sir.
And she's stationed, her home base is El Paso?
Yes, sir. She's stationed at Fort Bliss.
How long has she lived in El Paso?
About 2 years, I believe.
How long have you been, how long, you said you got post-traumatic stress syndrome by being in prison for so long. How long were you in prison on these sex charges?
Since I was 24, I'm 63 now.
How long were you in prison?
I was in prison actually 30 years.
And how long were you out before you quit reporting in November of 2019?
I was out ever since 2016.
So you were out for 3 years?
I was out for 5 years.
5 years? Now, let me ask you this. When did you transfer to Georgia?
I transferred to Georgia in 2016. When I left the.
Soon as you got out, basically.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And did you have a place to stay when you were in Georgia initially?
Yes, I did, sir. I had a place to stay, but my mom, they turned on me. I was working as a construction worker, and you know, things went bad with my mom's. I was paying her mortgage for like 2 years. And when I stopped paying her mortgage, she put me out, you know, turned it back on me.
All right.
Mr. Marabella?
Yes.
Because of Mr. Rousell's status, he will not be able to live with his daughter. And he was in violation of his sex offender contract.
Right.
Every second he lived with his daughter in El Paso, Texas. And basically, he left Georgia without permission.
Right.
And he blamed his parole officer in Georgia, but the parole officer in Louisiana, the New Orleans district, requested that he return to New Orleans for a compliance check. And this was in 2019.
Yeah.
He neglected, he ran around, he avoided being in compliance and blamed his parole officer in Georgia, but it was a request from Louisiana that he return for a compliance check. If he did all right, he could return to Georgia. Instead, he fled to Texas, which is a violation. He lived in a home with minor children, which is a violation of his sex offender contract. I just wanted to enter that information into the record.
Thank you. Mr. Rousell, anything further you'd like to say before we vote?
Sir, I just thank the board for flying me back from El Paso, Texas, you know, on an airplane. That was my first trip, and I appreciate it, you know. But other than that, now, you know, I'm just remorseful for leaving without telling anybody. You know, I was stressed out, you know, so that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rousell. Mr. Rousell, you know, it's unfortunate that you have these mental health issues. I believe they're probably real. I think you need some treatment. You know, but you're a sex offender and you got to follow the rules. And you were given many opportunities, even though you had problems with the people in Georgia. You were required to come back to Louisiana and instead you fled to Texas in violation not only of your parole, but all of the sex offender registration requirements that there are. And those are very serious. They're in place for a specific reason. And for several years, you violated all of those things. Therefore, my vote today is going to be to revoke your supervision and remand you to prison to serve the rest of your term. That would be my vote. Ms. Wise?
Mr. Joseph, I hear what you're saying. It is not very clear to me, but it's real to you. But the decision making, it just wasn't, you know, when you're on parole, you really have to make sure you do what your officer tell you to do. And I think that if you had a checked in Louisiana, when you got whoever bought you that bus ticket, you could have spent a couple of nights in New Orleans on your and did the paperwork, we wouldn't be talking to you today. It's decision making. It's decision making. And it's first things first. First things first, second things second. And I don't think you process that. And you know, you got a lot going on. But I concur with Mr. Marabella. My vote is to revoke your supervision and original sentence imposed. You have a different lifestyle now as a sex offender, and you got to be mindful of that.
Ms. Rochette?
Mr. Rousell, you were ordered to return to Louisiana for a simple compliance check on your supervision. You chose to abscond from Georgia and you fled to Texas without permission. You lived with minor children in violation of your sex offender contract. By absconding out of state without permission is a revocable offense. Therefore, I revoke your supervision.
Understandable.
Mr. Rousell, you have 3 votes to revoke. Your parole has been revoked today. Good luck to you, sir.
Okay, good luck to y'all. But like I said, the Innocent Project is dealing with my case anyway. I've been claiming my innocence since I was 24. So I don't live as a sex offender. I'm sorry. I just
That's
don't
all
live
right.
that. Okay.
As long as you're convicted, you've got to follow the rules.
I understand what you're saying, sir. I've been following them for 36 years now.
I'm not going to argue with you. Good luck to you,
Okay.
sir.
Good luck to y'all too.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, so we're going to go over the facts of this case and the Innocence Project taking on his case. I will call that straight up as no, not a chance. He got a 40-year sentence, so he's going to be backing another 10 years for this revocation. And what he did to a 4th grade teacher was absolutely terrifying. And there is, we go through the facts of the case, and there is very little doubt in his guilt. And of course, it's the Innocence Project is not supporting him. You know, I love that response that he had. Okay, all right, sure. You know, you had one thing you had to do and you didn't do it. What did you think was going to happen? And I don't feel bad for him. Karma has a great way of keeping him locked up, right? Judge gave him 40 years and now he's going to serve his 40 years. Let's see if I can get this properly. Well, I'm not sure why it's formatting's a little off. Thank you, Richard, for providing the information. All right, so he was charged with forcible sexual assault and found guilty. He was sentenced to 40 years of hard labor without the benefit of parole, suspension of sentence for the first. It's funny that it says without parole for the first 2 years. Are you serious? He really had opportunity after just 2 years? But he was also ordered to pay $80 court costs. Oh, man. Okay. Or if he didn't spend $8, he gets an extra 30 days. It's just funny how they throw that stuff in. All right. On January 31st, 1985, the victim, a 4th grade school teacher, and there's an address mentioned, YouTube. Please do not strike me. This is not a valid address. This was 38 years ago. Thank you. Was awakened at 2 a.m. by a black male weighing approximately 170 pounds and standing at 5'9". Miss Durden screamed, and the perpetrator jumped on her bed, stuffed a rag in her mouth, and moved a knife towards her throat. The perpetrator then pushed the victim down a small hallway and into her living room, where he forced her to perform fellatio upon him before he sexually assaulted her. Subsequently, the perpetrator sitting on the couch and the victim on the floor had a brief discussion. The victim assured the perpetrator that she would wait 10 minutes before calling the police. At this point, they returned to her bedroom, and he asked her if she enjoyed their encounter and told her that he had not intended to wake her up. Okay. The perpetrator then exited through a window, and the victim waited approximately 10 minutes before seeking help. Following the 10-minute waiting period, the victim attempted to telephone Dr. Halsey, her landlord, who lived upstairs, but she couldn't because her phone was not working. So she ran upstairs and got him. Now there's more information we'll go over. He appealed, saying that there was no way that she could have identified him, or that the identification was suggested from the police. And why I say it wasn't is that she actually did quite an outstanding job at identity. So we can go through it. They actually go through more of the information here. It's a long report, and they go through what happened a few times. So here's some more details. The record reveals that the victim was confronted where she slept at 2 a.m. in the morning of January 1st. The perpetrator entered her residence through a window. After awakening, she observed the perpetrator standing in the doorway of her bedroom. Can you imagine waking up and there's a man in your doorway of your bedroom? He thereafter thrust himself on her, pushing her flat onto the bed. He covered her mouth with his hand, put a knife to her throat. A struggle ensued, and the victim sustained a cut to her hand from the knife. The appellant shoved a dirty rag in her mouth and demanded money, change, and jewelry. Thereafter, the victim was dragged from her bed and forced through the house, being knocked into various objects within the house as she moved along. She was then forced to the floor. Her back was cut with a knife, and she was threatened again with sexual assault. She then was orally and vaginally. She also threatened with more bodily harm before leaving. The defendant told her if she moved or screamed that he would return and take care of her. Here's what the sentencing judge said. But it further up there, it's we'll go over that after. I know I'm jumping around. It's just I probably shouldn't have jumped around. But so in the sentencing, the defendant, the trial judge considered the statutory guidelines for sentencing and articulated her basis for the record. The sentencing judge took into account the first offender status of the defendant and his youth as mitigating factors. She also, however, considered his demeanor and the severity of his offense, as well as its effect upon the victim. The judge perceived the defendant to be a very dangerous person who could not be permitted to remain among decent people. She also stated that the defendant was one of the most serious and despicable people that has ever come before me. So that was the impression that he left the judge. One of the most despicable people to ever come before her. Additionally, the judge found that the defendant sexually assaulted the victim, subjected her to the most inhuman behavior, and took from her her dignity and humanity. The judge also observed that the victim sustained incredible damage, such that she was shaking like a leaf. The victim was also seen to be traumatized by the defendant, and she suffered physical injury of a cut to her hand during the assault. And therefore, they found that that the maximum penalty was allowed. Now, further up, so they talk about the misidentification, and they go over how there's no way that she was did the misidentification. So we'll go through that. So the first thing they say is that there's no way that she could have seen him. And they go through again what happened. But they say no, there were 2 light bulbs right above when she came in, and the lights were on and she saw him. They talk about how she continued to look at him and she observed him turn off the bathroom light. Upon reaching the living room, the victim was instructed to lie flat on the floor. A night light in the kitchen was shining in the living room. The living room was lighted by a fixture in the outside of the house. So they're talking about how, yes, she saw him, and the incident lasted 20 minutes, and she saw him. Then following the departure, the police were summoned by the victim's landlord, and the victim gave the landlord a brief description of her attacker as being a dark-skinned black male, approximately 5 feet 10 inches. She next described her assailant to detectives on the day of her attack. The victim indicated that her assailant was a black male in her 20s. In his 20s, muscular build, approximately 5'10", medium, lengthy, curly hair with medium to large lips. The next day, the victim drew a sketch of her attacker, indicating the distinguishing features. So then she drew a sketch. Then the detective notified the victim that he would be bringing some photographs for her to view. On February 23rd, 1985, so this is February 23rd, 1985. So January 31st is when it happened. He brought her pictures February 23rd. So it's like, it took some time, 23 days later. Now remember, this is 1985. He brought 6 photos. I guess so what they're saying is, how does the detective catch this guy, right? There's not a DNA. They didn't. So it's really a description and photographs. Then the pair went into the kitchen where the victim was given the 6 photographs. According to the detective, the person depicted in the photographs had similar characteristics as those of the assailant, and the name plates of the pictures were covered over with tape. No suggestions were made to the victim as to which, if any, photograph she should choose. The photographs were not presented in a manner that would suggest one over another. The victim laid her sketch of the assailant on the bar. The photos were also on the bar, and the victim was asked if she had seen any of these persons. The victim looked at each picture, and then she pushed 2 photos aside. She then selected picture number 2 as the person that had the same eyes, protruding cheekbones, and the permed hair condition as the person who attacked her. According to Detective Kistner, the victim made a strong tentative identification. So she did it very, it wasn't like timid. She picked it. She thereafter requested a physical lineup. Following this 15-minute photographic identification process, the detective advised that the victim in the photograph that she had chosen was already in jail. Now, he was arrested, right? This is 20-something days later. He was arrested for something else. Not that he was already in jail when this happened, right? So a week before the trial, so that now they're going to trial. A week before the trial, a physical lineup was conducted, at which time the victim again selected the defendant as being the person who did it. Applying the principles of, what's this word? Enunciated in Manson Supra, we find that the identification was not suggestive, nor was it subject to misidentification. So, our review of the record indicates the victim, over a period of approximately 20 minutes, had at least 2 periods of face-to-face encounter with her assailant. The first period occurred before her attack as the assailant stood in the doorway of her bedroom with light from a nearby bathroom. So they go through how, what more can you say, right? You have the eyewitness who draws a sketch, picks the photo lineup, picks the lineup, and now is it possible that it's not the same person? I guess, but he was found guilty by a jury. You know, it's you know, there are other factors, I'm sure, about not having a good alibi, things like that. But yeah, if I have to make a decision, I just don't. I think you just have to believe the system in this case, and believe the victim, the survivor, who confidently picks someone out of a lineup. But it's he gets a 40-year sentence. He's out. He said for 5 years. The math didn't really add up to me, but he serves 30 years of it, and then to his own fault. Like they all said, you know, it was interesting. Mr. Marabella was kind of like, it seemed like he was trying to lean to have mercy on him, and then it was Miss Wise and Mr. Richer that were like reminding Mr. Marabella of the facts, and I think they rightfully revoked him. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, and with that, I'll let you go.
All right, so Ms. Jackson, you're here before the pardon board today. You're asking for a commutation of your sentence. And you were sentenced on September 24th, 2002 for a manslaughter conviction in Franklin Parish and received a 30-year DOC sentence. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Marabella.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Ms. Jackson, my name is Tony Marabella. I've got a few questions I'm going to ask you today. If you have any questions, you can just ask me. If my question's a little confusing, you can just stop me, okay?
Right.
Ms. Jackson, it's my understanding that you are you 45 years old, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're a first-time offender?
That's correct.
You graduated high school in 1974?
94.
1994.
That's correct.
Okay, and you have 2 children?
Yes.
How old are your children?
They're 26 and 24 now.
Okay. And you've been in prison for how long now?
This year makes 20 years.
So 20 years.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about the programs that you've taken while you've been in prison. I have a list of them, so I know you've done a lot. So let me ask that question a little differently. What do you consider to be some of the most important programs that you've taken and learned from while you've been in prison?
One of the main ones that I've taken as soon as I've gotten here was domestic violence, that program, because I've grown up around a lot of it in my household. My mom's friends, I've witnessed it, but being in a situation like that, I had to learn about it on my own.
Okay. And what sort of classes have you taken on domestic abuse issues that have helped you?
Actually, the different teachings there were really teaching me about what to do when you're in them. Actually, it's really what I've grown up around seeing, but when you're ashamed, when you're in one, you don't do what you think you should be doing.
Okay. Well, let me ask a different question, maybe a little history question. As you were growing up, did you live in a family where domestic abuse violence was prevalent?
Yes, I was, yes.
Was it your father?
It was a stepdad with my mom.
A stepdad, and was he abusive to you as well as to your mother, or
verbally? He was
verbally to your mother, or verbally to you, or verbally to
everyone in the household, actually.
Now, you've indicated, and I've reviewed your record and the comments that you've made, and you've indicated that this crime was committed basically because you didn't want to get beat again. Is that fair to say? Is that still kind of your position?
That's my position, and trying to make sure I could have, the situation could have been differently, but it wasn't. I tried to run, but however, it wasn't quite, it was a painful situation.
Okay. How long were you together with this man, the victim in this case?
We were on and off for over a year.
Okay. Now, I have a little knowledge of domestic abuse battery, nothing personal, but I have some experience in being involved in cases involving, and I realize that they aren't always reported, and police aren't always called, and oftentimes it's at home when no one else knows.
Correct.
Did you ever report him to the police because of any sort of domestic abuse, violence, or any sort of actions against you?
I didn't.
Okay. And one of the reasons why I ask that is because you have said throughout your
Yeah.
time in prison, and even today, that you were domestically abused. Yet there are people who know him and who knew him who kind of deny that. Even his ex-wife says he was never violent or never anything like that. How often were you abused by him?
I won't say it was, I'll give it at least once a week.
Okay.
Something
Now,
came up.
when you say you were abused, and I realize that emotional abuse,
Yes.
verbal abuse are oftentimes just as bad as physical
Yes.
abuse. But were you physically abused by him as well?
Yes, I was.
Did you ever seek medical attention, even though you might not have reported it to the police?
I left before.
Okay.
I left and went to my sister's in Dallas, Texas.
Okay. Did you, or back then, did you have you ever used drugs before?
No, never.
Okay. Alcohol, any issues with drugs or alcohol?
None at all.
Okay. You are classified as a first offender. Have you been arrested for anything else?
Nothing.
Is this the only thing
At
that you've
all.
ever been arrested for?
Only thing.
Tell me a little bit about the things that you have learned, and you've indicated to me about domestic abuse battery. What sort of classes, what sort of programs have you taken that you think will assist you if we were if we voted today somehow to get you out fairly soon? What things have you learned in prison that would be very helpful to you?
I've taken computer classes. I have a diploma in office systems technology. I've also been to college for 4 years, and I have my bachelor's and my associates.
Okay.
I'm also a member of Toastmasters International. So I know
And
those
what is your degree? What did you study in college?
communications and sociology.
Now, as you know, there's a lot of people that are opposing your getting out. There's nothing you can do about that, but there are people who oppose your getting out. What would you say to me about why I should vote to commute your sentence today or make you immediately parole eligible?
I have really and truly prayed about this, asked the Lord for my forgiveness, and I also am able now to ask for forgiveness from the family. Because we were all close at one time. We really were. And I know me being locked up, I didn't just take myself from my family, but I took someone they loved away too. And I had to come to the realization of it wasn't all about me in this situation. And if I could have taken that day back and changed it, I would. And but I can't do it. All I can do is ask for forgiveness from the family.
Now, you've taken some anger management classes, Cage Your Rage and things of that nature.
Yes.
If you were to be released and you find yourself, and sometimes, even though time goes on, sometimes people find themselves in an abusive relationship.
Right.
If you were to find yourself in a similar relationship, what would you do today?
I would take all of the teachings I've learned from the classes, the experiences I've experienced back home growing up. I would change it. I would leave. I will leave.
Yeah. Do you currently have a relationship with your children? Do you
Oh,
speak
yes.
to them?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
you speak to them fairly often.
Yes.
Where are they at now?
My baby is in Alabama and my oldest daughter is in Dallas.
Madam Chairman, those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mirabello. Mr. Jones, do you have any questions? Your microphone's on mute. You're still on mute. Can you get it? There you go.
Good morning, Ms. Vikki. How are you this morning?
I'm fine.
Okay. So, how long were you in this relationship? About a year or so with the victim?
Yes.
Okay. And it was an abusive relationship.
Yes, it was.
But you never reported it.
I didn't.
Why did you choose not to report it?
Ashamed, and also he really wouldn't let that happen.
Yeah. And you say you have two kids.
Yes.
Either of these kids, is he the father of any?
No, he isn't. It
He's
was
not the
before
father.
we met.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Roche.
Good morning, Ms. Jackson. How are you?
Good morning.
Good.
I'm all right.
I'm going to go a little farther. I've just reviewed your ACER score, and your ACER score is a 4, which is moderate, saying that you had some negative and some violent factors in your early childhood that may explain your criminal activity at the time you committed that offense. You said you were abused on a weekly basis. Was that physically or verbally most times?
It was both.
Good. So when was the last case of abuse prior to this incident?
I will say it was probably the week before that happened.
So it was days before what actually happened?
The incident.
Yes. So basically the last incident was days prior to the actual offense. Is that correct?
Yes, about a week.
So at that time, you were not experiencing, you were not receiving the training And if you knew then what you know now, you would have walked away.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
So tell me, with the education that you obtained while incarcerated, what do you plan to do if and when you're released?
I want to counsel. That's one of my main things. I want to counsel domestic violence victims, also juveniles. That's where my passion is.
So one area of concentration was social work.
Say that again?
One of your concentration in your education was social work?
Well, it was sociology. But
Okay.
still,
Yeah.
I know it can help play a factor in it.
Okay. So tell this panel this morning, why should we vote to recommend to the governor that he commute your sentence?
Because throughout these years, I've learned so much and I have changed so much. This experience has really opened my eyes to life in general. I was in my 20s when this first happened. Still young, trying to figure myself out and actually failing most of the times. But now, I know better. I know better. And every decision I make now will be based on not my feelings and emotions, but what's really the truth. As in, if I was in a domestic violence relationship, I know now to leave. Any negative situation now, I just will not stay in it. And I know I've changed over the years. I rehabilitated myself tremendously with all the work I've done, with all the relationships, even in prison, I've learned from them. It was a life lesson in everything I've been through. And this was the major life lesson right here. And I've learned so much, and you all was to grant me this opportunity of freedom. I know I'll be good in the world. I'll do a lot of good in the world to a lot of people.
Final question, Ms. Jackson. Had you ever been inside a courtroom before this?
Never.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Ms. Jackson, you mentioned that you've never done drugs or alcohol.
Never.
Is that right? And did the victim in this case, was he a substance abuser at all?
He wasn't no, not that I knew of.
Okay. And had you ever, was this, you said you were in your 20s or 20. Is this your first serious relationship? Was this your first serious relationship?
I guess I could say my grown-up relationship.
Had you ever been in another intimate relationship where you were a victim of domestic abuse?
Never.
Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions. Warden Boutte, is there anything you can offer?
Yes. Ms. Jackson has been extremely educationally assertive. As she mentioned before, she's obtained her bachelor's and her master's. She's been that way in regards to the community of which she lives in at LCIW. She's had a couple of bumps as far as her DB reports are concerned, but nothing really of concern when I went through them. And the penalty that she got for it, none of this was based in fights or any type of violence. So I'll just make it short that she definitely has a positive note from me in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Always appreciate your input. So if we could hear from, let's see, family, I'll ask for Miss Kimberly Jack first. If you could limit your remarks to about 3 minutes.
Like she said, we came from a very bad background, watching our mom be beat almost every day to all of her friends, and never really getting counseling and knowing how to deal with this. I feel like she deserved a second chance in life. She was only 20 something. She never really got to live. She was just getting started. And our family has been through a lot. And pretty much now that she's the oldest, we really need her out here. We're really dealing with a lot, and she deserves a second chance. She's probably the most positive person in our family right now. Despite all that she's going through, she still is the most positive person in our family. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Kathleen? Let's see, now you have to take your microphone off of mute. There you go.
I was pushing the wrong button.
Yeah.
I just want to say thanks for the opportunity, giving us the opportunity to speak. On the behalf of my sister, I want to say my sister is sincerely sorry for the decision that she made 20 years ago. She is not the same person she was then. She is very apologetic about the hurt and pain she has caused Mr. Eugene family. She has also, I have watched my sister evolve into an intelligent woman. She has been a positive role model for the family and also our small town. She has had the opportunity to better herself as a person. Our family has been through a lot in the past years, and Vikki has been the strength of it all. Helped us get through it all. Vikki has lost her sister, brother, aunties, uncles, and also most of all, our mother. Vikki Jackson isn't a DOC number. Vikki Jackson is a mother, a grandma, a sister, an auntie, a daughter, and also a friend. Vikki has got enough discipline action for this. She has missed out on raising her kids and now has 3 grandkids. If Vikki is granted this release, Vikki will be. If Vikki is granted this release, Vikki will be a big part of a domestic violence advocate. I am also a victim of a domestic violence. I am also a survivor of domestic violence. I have left a situation and I thought I never would leave. And I want to say thank y'all for this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your participation. Mr. Jordan, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson. As I indicated, for the record, my name is Eddie Jordan. I represent Vikki Jackson, who is seeking a commutation of her sentence. She served 20 years or approximately 20 years of her 30-year sentence for manslaughter. That's 2/3 of her total sentence. That in and of itself is significant in this case. She's a first-time offender. She has no significant criminal history, including crimes of violence or drug offenses. She even has no record of misdemeanor offenses. She's had, as the warden indicated, roughly 1 or 2 incidents or write-ups in the entire 20-year period that she's served in prison. That is noteworthy. Normally, when people serve a significant period of time, they have several incidents where they've had difficulties making the adjustment to prison life. She served as a medical orderly, and apparently has acquired skills in that regard. And she's used her time in prison profitably by taking a number of occupational courses, anger management courses, educational, religious training programs as well. She has 17 certificates that we provided to the board, and one of them dates back to as early as 2005. So she clearly is not a person who just started rehabilitating. She's been in the process of rehabilitating from the very beginning. She's never been kicked out of any of the programs. She's always shown a willingness to learn and to actually internalize the teachings that have been provided to her. She apparently has never had a problem with any of her teachers or instructors. Again, proof that she is reformed. She's accepted responsibility for her offense. She does not say that she didn't do it. She says that she committed this offense. She says to the board that she was in an abusive relationship and that she was a victim of physical and emotional violence. And that is something that's not always reported. It's true that apparently she has not reported, she did not report those things, but she was roughly 25 years of age at the time of this relationship. And given her history, her exposure to domestic violence and her upbringing in her youth, it's not surprising that she would avoid calling the authorities and reporting these incidents. But the focus has to be on where she is today. And she has changed significantly since she was 25 years of age. And she spent roughly all of her adulthood. If we look at adulthood as starting at 18, she's practically spent all of her adulthood in prison. She's matured during that time. She's acquired the skills that are required for her to be an upstanding citizen when she gets out, to adjust to free society. And she has strong family support. And that support has made it possible for her to grow and learn from her terrible mistake. And it also bodes well for when she gets out of prison. She'll have someone to help her provide shelter and food, and someone who will give her the love and encouragement that are required to adjust to a free society. All of that is significant, I would say, and I would hope that the board would strongly consider that. There's no question that she committed this offense, but she has also changed her life, turned her life around. She's a different person, a new person. She will not disappoint the board. She will get out and she will make a contribution to society. She's a mother of 2 adult children. She apparently has grandchildren as well. She can make that adjustment now at age 45. And she'll be 46 later this year. I would implore the board to give her this opportunity to live the remainder of her adult life as a free person and to contribute to society and to make amends on the outside for for the crime that she committed by contributing to society, contributing to her family, contributing to her community.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. And I see where I thought we'd lost you, Ms. Gwen Jackson. I think you had indicated you'd like to speak. Would you like to do that now?
Hi, I'm Gwendolyn Jackson, or niece of Eugene, the victim, on September 21st of 2001. Eugene gave me a call on that day to say that he wanted Miss Vikki to leave. Mind you, prior to that, as she indicated, that she had left once before, and that was because he had called at that time also and asked late one night that I come and get her, and because the relationship wasn't working out. I didn't know the circumstances whatsoever, but I did as he asked. And while driving down the highway, and I was taking her to her hometown of St. Joe, whichever city she lived in over in that Tensall Parish. I was taking her there, and she asked me where was I taking her, and I told her that I was taking her home because there was nowhere else that I knew to take her. And she said, "I'm not going home looking this way." And at this point, I'm like looking at, my question to her was, "How? What do you mean?" And so she turned the light on in the vehicle, and she showed me her face, and there was nothing there. There wasn't a scar, there wasn't a bruise, there wasn't a black eye, there wasn't anything to indicate that anything had happened to her. So at this point, I'm like, okay. And I left it at that because, she didn't want to go to her hometown. So we rode up and down the highway for quite some time until I ended up in Monroe, and I dropped her at the bus station. I took her to my sister, and they got her to the bus station, and she left. She stayed for a few months or so. I don't know exactly how long, but she eventually came back, and she came and lived with me in my home. And while she was here, as she said, we had a relationship and everything was good. I had no reason to think otherwise of him nor her. He never said that anything of that caliber had ever occurred between the two of them, neither did she that I can recall. But on the 21st, he called that day, once again, to tell me, I was at work, to tell me that he needed her to leave again, that he wasn't going to deal with it. And he didn't want to put the situation back into my hands because it was something that, it was his life. And understandably, and however, a short few minutes after that, I received a second call from the neighbor saying that he was dead. And I was totally floored. I couldn't believe it. I didn't get a chance to see him that day. I didn't get a chance to see her, but she did reach out, as she stated. But I'm, as I told her, I forgive her, but I will never forget what she's done. Eugene was like a father to me as well, and he didn't get to see his younger kids at that time. They have no idea who he was. He was businessman here in town. He was upstanding. I don't know of any substance abuse. I really don't know if he even had any type of blemish on his record. That part of his, I don't know. But everyone here, as far as I know, loved him, and the family definitely loved him. He was a caregiver to his mother at the time that she took his life. She was staying in one of his rental homes. His mom was 93 at the time. And so she took him away from that. His mother had no idea what had just occurred in his back door. From what I understand, she slipped into the house and removed his gun from the holster and ran across the yard. And so when he went, after talking to me, he went to talk to her about leaving, apparently, and what occurred during that time, I have no idea, but I miss him. And I know she missed her family. She's probably had great loss in her family as well as my family. I recently lost both my parents within 6 months of each other, and it's a great loss. And like I say, Eugene was like a father, so I lost both my dads, I would say. And I commend her on the rehabilitation that she's gone through. I really do. And whenever she's released, I can't say that I'm ready for her to be released on this day, but whenever she's released, I pray that she do become an outstanding citizen here within her community as well, even if it's in my community. But I don't see, I opposed to her being
Okay.
released. I oppose.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gwen. We do appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. We appreciate it. So, Ms. Vikki, is there a statement you'd like to make to us before we vote?
And I do want to say I apologize for what happened, and if I can take the day back and leave, I would. However, I'm just praying and asking that you have mercy for me on the board and grant me freedom.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Marabella, you prepared to vote?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Jackson, I appreciate your talking with me today and answering my questions. Ms. Gwen Jackson, I appreciate your being here and stating your position, and I certainly do understand your position. I've been in this business for many years. I was a prosecutor, a defense lawyer, and a judge. And I know that there are many, many layers to domestic abuse battery. There's no pattern. Just because one doesn't report it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There are all kinds of potential domestic abuse battery issues. Ms. Jackson has clearly indicated, as has her sister, they grew up in a family where there was domestic abuse battery. I have no reason to believe that it wasn't a situation here, even though there may not have been any reports. That doesn't alter the fact that she killed a man. And obviously it wasn't a self-defense sort of thing because she pled guilty to a serious, very serious charge. I note she was charged originally with second-degree murder. It was reduced to a manslaughter, which tells me either their case wasn't as strong as they thought it was, or they thought it was closer to justification or some mitigation as opposed to a murder. Be that as it may, that's in the past. We're not here to judge her for what she did. We're here to judge her for what she's done since she's been here. She has made tremendous strides in her education. She's done terrific programs. She has spent 20 years, as Mr. Jordan has pointed out, the bulk of her mature years she spent in prison. She has a low risk assessment. She has an excellent recommendation from the warden. Based upon all of those things, one of the things that I know as a judge that I would tell someone, especially when I sentenced them to a long period of time, you have two choices. You can go to prison and become a better prisoner, or you can go to prison and become a better person. Ms. Jackson has obviously taken that second road, which is the better road, and that is she appears to have become a better a better person. And I believe that she is ready to get out and make a life for herself. So it would be my recommendation to the governor that he commute her sentence to make her immediately parole eligible. That would be my vote, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. Mr. Jones?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I concur with Mr. Marabella. I agree. He explained it as well. I can't explain it no better. My vote today would be to grant also.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Roche?
Madam, excuse me, Madam Chairman, based, excuse me, Madam Chairman, based upon Ms. Jackson being a first felony offender, the only arrest on her record, positive remarks by Warden Butte, a low risk assessment score, good programs. My vote is the same.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. And Ms. Vikki, I concur with my colleagues. My vote, based on the hard work that you've done, that you've put forth, my vote today is to make the recommendation that we commute your sentence and make you immediately parole eligible. So you've received a unanimous vote, and we will make that recommendation on your behalf to Governor Edwards. Good luck to you, ma'am.
I want to thank the board.
Okay, so that was the commutation hearing. And what's interesting about this case is just a few months later, they have the parole hearing, which we're about to watch. So they recommended to the governor to commute her sentence on 1/25/2021, and in September 22, 2021, they have her parole hearing, which is pretty fast. It doesn't typically move that fast. So thank you, Richard, for putting those two together, connecting the dots so we can track it. We'll jump in and watch that hearing before I do my commentary. So with that, let's jump in.
Yes, I do.
Okay, this is a case for Vikki Jackson, DOC 452462, date of birth, February 4th, 1975, classified as a first felony offender. Offense is manslaughter. Parole date, July 14, 2021. Good time, March 25th, 2026. Parole term, September 20th, 2031. Is this information correct?
Yes, it is.
Ms. Jackson.
Good morning, Ms. Jackson.
Good morning.
And for the record, you and I don't know each other and we are not related. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I've been assigned your case. I've reviewed it and I'm going to have some questions for you this morning. So I just want you to relax and we're going to talk about some things, all right?
All right.
You were convicted of manslaughter and sentenced in 2002. Is that correct?
Correct.
How long have you actually been incarcerated?
20 years now.
And how old were you at the time of the offense?
27.
And what did you do? What kind of work did you do before being incarcerated?
Nursing.
Okay. You were an actual nurse or a nursing assistant?
I was a CNA.
Okay. So I know that this was an incident involving yourself and a gentleman that you were in a relationship with. Is that correct?
Correct.
And as a consequence, he was killed and you pled guilty. You actually got a commutation. Is that correct? Am I misreading that? You got a commutation of sentence?
Correct.
On July 14th of 2021.
Correct.
I want to talk to you about what you have done over the last 20 years while you've been incarcerated. First, what is your current job assignment at the prison?
A health care orderly.
And how long have you had that position?
Probably 15 years now.
And what about your disciplinary record? How many write-ups have you had?
Maybe throughout time, 12.
And do you recall the last time you had a write-up?
2016.
Do you remember what that might have involved?
I don't even remember right now.
Okay. And did you get sanctioned? Did you have any thing taken away from you?
No, I didn't.
I show that maybe you had 4 disciplinary write-ups over the course of your incarceration.
It wasn't many at all. That's why I can't even recall like a number, because a lot of them wasn't, I didn't go to lockdown or anything.
Okay. Okay. Well, tell us, what kind of programs have you taken?
Oh, everything.
It looks like you maxed out on all the programs that you could take. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, what programs do you think were most beneficial to you? Which ones stand out as being the ones that really had an impact on you and helped you grow?
The main one was domestic violence, those programs.
Okay, tell me about that.
It actually taught me a better way to deal with relationships.
Well, first tell me about the domestic violence. Is there a domestic violence program in LCIW?
Yes, but not at the current time since the pandemic, but we've
I
had
understand, but there was one.
Oh, right, yes.
And was that geared towards offenders of domestic abuse, or was it geared towards victims of domestic abuse?
It was really open to either or.
Okay.
Yeah, victims could come, and I guess someone that had parents or friends, someone that knew someone, they can always also come.
And what made you enroll? I'm sorry. For some reason I got. What made you enroll?
Oh, because I've been through domestic violence, my parents, and I also had a sister that divorced from a relationship like that.
And what did you get out? What was the most impactful thing that you got out of that program?
It taught me a better way to deal with conflicts.
Give me some.
With abusive partners.
Okay, you want?
Yes.
What'd you learn in particular? What specifics did you learn?
How to leave, what to do when it occurs. Look for the red flags. Notice the red flags and what to do. And the main one is, excuse me?
Go ahead.
And the main one is to leave or notify someone. My thing was I really didn't tell anyone.
Okay.
Though people knew, but I didn't personally tell anyone.
Okay. And how long were you in the relationship with the decedent?
On and off for a few years.
What's a few?
I say 3. I kept leaving, coming back.
Can you think of any other programs that you found helpful and that you've used?
Of course, my Toastmasters class. Well, it wasn't a class, it's an international.
I'm familiar with. Well, what did you find helpful about Toastmasters?
It taught me speaking skills, really, and leadership skills.
And how do you, go ahead.
Because that's what I want to use on the outside.
Well, how have you used those skills on the inside, speaking and leadership skills? How have you used those during your incarceration?
I started a Dream Big program within my Toastmasters Club for the young offender population.
What was that program?
Dream Big.
And describe that for us.
My mission was to get young offenders to better themselves, dream big for their futures within being incarcerated and upon their leaving.
And what's the model for that program?
The model actually is basically, I wanted them to have an outlet to go to, an outlet to want to change so they can have mentors. We also was doing mentoring in the program also to them.
And has that program discontinued?
Well, a lot have changed because the leadership has changed with the presidents, different people taking over different positions in the club. So I hadn't did one since the pandemic.
What would you say has changed most about you since 2001, 2002?
Oh my God, my whole mindset. My mindset. Basically, I've grown up. I've matured from what I used to be. I was real immature then. Mature in relationships, immature in really all my relationships. My relationships, the way I dealt with life. Now I see life in a whole different view. And I'm ready to go do something different. I want to take everything I learned here to the outside to help others. Something I would have never thought to do 20 years ago.
Warren Butag.
Yes, ma'am.
What can you tell us about Ms. Jackson?
First thing I can say is that Ms. Jackson is obviously nervous right now. She's very
Yes.
articulate.
Yes.
She has a way of narrating her situation that is easy to understand, and I'm
Yes.
sort of kind of dumbfounded right now by the response, but I know it comes from nervousness. However, she's been through several courses to better herself, such as money management, victims awareness, values clarification, goal setting, personal development, living in balance, life's healing choices, all of which have definitely contributed to her becoming just a better person that, you know, from the time that I've been here, she has not been any issues. She's been a pillar of the offender population. I don't have any negative things to say, period, about this individual. Personally, I believe that once she leaves this institution, she will not be a risk to anyone. She'll be an asset to a positive footprint in this world.
Thank you, Warden. Ms. Kelsey, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Let's see, now we'll hear from Ms. Kathleen. Is Ms. Kathleen on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
I don't know
go
why you
ahead.
can't see me, but
It's okay, we can hear you.
okay. I'm here on behalf of my sister, my lovely sister Vikki Jackson. Here to just talk about her accomplishments that she have done and she have gained. She has encouraged me as well on the outside. I have seen a different her while she's there. I have my days here, but it's like she's calmed me down through a lot of stuff that I deal with. I also have anger issues. I've been through domestic violence and have worked through that. Have looked at her through her situation, got advice from her in everything that she have done. So I feel like she's, you know, has been there, you know, long enough to be able to normalize and do with the outside world. She have, you know, lost her mom. We have lost our mom, our sister, brother, many people in our family that has passed away as while she's been down. She have gained grandkids as well. So I mean, we just ready for her to, you know, come home and be with the family.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Mr. Hunley, Mr. Andrew Hunley.
Andrew Hunley with Louisiana Parole Project. We stand before the board today to let you know that we have agreed to take Vikki as a client in our residential reentry program. Immediately upon release, she will reside at our women's house in Baton Rouge. Our organization has already secured employment for her, but first she'll go through our the first phase of our program, which is the intensive reintegration portion, when she finishes all those self-help classes, technology, skills training, social norm training, and we get all of her services taken care of, then she'll go into the second phase of our program, which will then, she'll continue to be in residence with us, but we'll start work, start volunteer opportunities in the community and start working to reintegrate into the community, which includes something we know a big part of what she's looking to do is find a church community in Baton Rouge to join, and we look forward to helping connect her to one. Our organization anticipates that she will be living with us for several months as she works towards self-sufficiency. But we do commit our program along with employment assistance, which I can say that we've already secured for her at this time. And I stand by if the board has any other questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we'll hear from Ms. Gwen. All right, Ms. Gwen, if you'd like to make a statement.
Hi, my name is Gwen Jackson, niece to the victim, Eugene Jackson. I would just like to say, I'm just gonna wish Vikki well. I listened to her accomplishments while she was there. The opportunities that she probably wouldn't have had if she's been here on the outside. But however, I still feel the pain of the loss. Yesterday was the anniversary of the death. So at this moment, that is very painful to me, as well as his birthday is on tomorrow. But that, with all that being said, I wish this had happened differently. I don't know what exactly occurred that day to have triggered her to do what was done. As she said, I heard that she had gone to classes which would have allowed her the opportunity to have walked away, which she did have that opportunity, yet she came back. And in her return, the end result was the loss of my uncle. Like I say, I don't know exactly what happened, transpired that morning, but as to say that she dealt with violence from him prior to that, there was none known on my part. But at the same time, I'm not going to harp on yesterday, but at the end of the day, I wish Vikki well, and in her release, if that is the direction she's going, and I congratulate you on your reform.
All right, thank you. All right, would you like to make a statement on your behalf? No, I'll tell you what, Mr. Jordan wants to speak before you speak. So go ahead, Mr. Jordan, you go ahead and open up, and then we'll let her close at the end.
Ms. Jackson has shown and demonstrated genuine remorse for the offense that she committed. She has acquired the life skills that will enable her to avoid a life of crime, certainly avoid reoffending in the way that she has already committed an offense. Specifically, she is not going to be involved in domestic violence in any way again. She's also prepared to successfully re-enter society, and she will, as I indicated, not reoffend, and that will be in the interest of public safety, and it will also be something that she's going to actually make a contribution to society in a way that she had never visualized before. The plan that she has is a sound one. As indicated, she's going to the Louisiana Parole Project. She'll be residing at the transitional housing there in Baton Rouge. She's going to complete courses. She's going to save money. She's going to acquire transportation. She already has a job. She hopes to have a better job at some point. She's going to have a stable place to live, and that is an environment in which she will only grow more, and she will not be in a situation where she can present a problem to society again. And I think the board has every reason to endorse her plan of reentry, and allow her to proceed with her plan to be released immediately and rejoin society.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, Ms. Jackson, would you like to make a statement on your behalf?
I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to even be able to be here again. And Governor Evers also. But I am still remorseful for what I've done 20 years ago. And Gwen, I appreciate the things you've said. But I know nothing can bring him back, and I am still sorry for that. I am ready to enter society. I want to do so much work out there, especially helping domestic violence victims. I really want to start a program that's going to help benefit them, and also women that's still in here that need help. I think if you give me this chance, I will do the best I can and will not come back to prison again. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Is panel prepared to vote?
Yes.
Miss Bonnie Jackson.
Okay. Before I comment on Miss Vikki Jackson, I'd just like to comment on the graciousness of Miss Gwen Jackson. It's extraordinary when people impacted by a crime have the capacity to show grace to the offender, and I commend you for that. Ms. Vikki Jackson, I also commend you for the hard work that you've done while you're incarcerated. You took every program available. Your risk score is low. You are a first offender to begin with. You've received positive comments from the warden, and you have a good transition plan in place. And so I believe that you're equipped to get out and be successful. So my vote today is to grant your parole, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Ms. Renata.
I do concur for all the same reasons. My vote today also is to grant parole. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, you have 2 votes to grant your parole. Also, I'm going to vote to grant your parole for the hard work you've done, the positive institutional record, your positive warden comments, low risk assessment score. I would vote to grant your parole, send you to the parole project. I want you to have a curfew from 9 p to 6 a, and I want you to do 4 hours of community service per month. I'm sure you'll probably do more than that, but I want you to at least do 4 hours of community service per month. And I would like you to have just a general counseling evaluation. Maybe you can get it through the parole project, but I would like to have just a general counseling evaluation. So you have 3 votes to grant your parole. Do you understand the stipulations?
Yes, I do.
3 votes to grant your parole. Stipulations stated. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
We'll
both.
adjourn. You're welcome. We'll adjourn at 11:29 LCW. Thank you.
You know, we don't have a lot or really much more any context in here than what we had from the prior hearing. I thought maybe Ms. Jackson would go into more details, but we didn't really get that. The only discrepancy that I picked up was from the first hearing. The second hearing was that she said that they were in a relationship for about a year in the first hearing, and then the second hearing she said 3 years. We can go look at that now.
How long were you together with this man, the victim in this case?
We were on and off for over a year.
Okay. Now,
Over a year versus what she told Miss Jackson, which was
Though people knew, but I didn't personally tell anyone.
Okay. And how long were you in the relationship with the decedent?
On and off for a few years.
What's a few?
I say 3. I kept leaving, coming back.
so there you go. I mean, it's, in my opinion, quite a discrepancy, you know. But outside of that, I thought that she was, you know, she's quite charismatic and well spoken. And anyone else notice the knight, the full suit of armor with in the background by Eddie Jordan? That is those the knight, the armor thing. I've always kind of wanted one. I think a lot of guys kind of think they're cool, but really I don't. Like, where would I actually put one? But they're pretty cool. So yeah, outside of that, there's no documentation on this hearing, but there is something interesting that Richard found, which is a podcast. I like sped through it, and it does seem, but I haven't listened to it fully, frankly. It's a 2-part, an hour each. I'll put the link in the description. He interviews 3 different inmates who've served time. So if you want to get, I think I will listen to it later because I am curious about it. I'll put the link in the description below. And I mean, gosh, when I was first listening to this, the inconsistencies that I saw were where her, and this was in deceased, I think is what Miss Jackson called him, not victim, but deceased, deceases. His previous spouse had no reporting of abuse, and I thought that was interesting or telling. But then again, there's a lot of studies on these things. There's a lot of records on it, and you just don't know. So, and I'm sure and I know a lot of you who watch have come from abusive relationships. She had no prior, she says she never told anyone. She has no reporting of it. The only documentation that she has where there was abuse is that she had left the relationship. It's clear that law enforcement and, all say that what she did was obviously illegal. It wasn't an act of violence where it was self-defense. It was more like, I guess, what it was that she just had enough and took his weapon and ended him, and that's why she spent all this time in prison. But if the question is, do you believe that she was abused even without there being any record or history of it, and no prior indication that he was violent? I think that's the question I have, and I guess that you just, if you want to, I guess it's if you want to choose to believe her, because I think that surely there are a lot of indicators that this situation where someone is abused and nobody knows about it exists. So I don't think there's a reason not to believe her. I know that a lot of you I see in the chat talk about similar situations where people just don't tell anyone, so no one would know. But yeah, overall, it's I don't have a lot to share, and I'm sorry about that. But I think we'll move on to, well, I guess with that, I'll let you go.